do this continuance first.
Yeah.
Oh, Nick's asking for the link. Do you have it? Shoot, hold on, no, never mind. I'm just getting this one. Did you send the link or no?
I did, yeah.
But, yeah,
Or maybe it was.
he's probably doing a million things.
I'll just send it to John.
You know what, I'll add John
Yeah,
here,
I
I'll
was
just
just
add
about
them
to
both.
say that, yeah. Perfect.
See, I had to come once so I could see what this looks like.
Do you have the agenda, Pam?
I do.
Perfect, so
You
just.
can't see it.
So I think if we can announce this first,
The continued
Yeah.
for that one.
yep, and then we'll do the motion. And then we can jump right back to the sign.
And you don't think doing both continued hearings is,
No, we have to wait
Suggestion?
till 8:30, I think, to do that one.
oh, really?
Yeah,
Oh,
so,
that's how it works.
Yeah.
And then we have to wait till
Did I know?
8:30?
No.
Oh.
We're only just to do the continuance.
Because
We
there are
interrupt
people
what
who are
we're doing.
arriving at 8:30
right,
Yeah,
and they don't know.
Right.
Okay. Yes.
maybe we can announce it and then announce it again.
Alright,
But yeah, it's good to do it, like in case someone comes and we don't recognize them,
that's right.
just do it at the right time.
And who's the gentleman who's up on the right-hand corner?
that is Mr. Batten, he's here for the sign application.
Hello.
So Pam, you can, Nick is gonna join, he just emailed us.
Okay.
John
There
is
he
just
right
joining,
now.
so once you call to order, you can turn it over to me and I'll announce the, just the
Change
usual
the
stuff we do. No,
Oh.
the usual stuff we do at
Work.
the beginning of the minute.
Yes.
The meeting.
Call that boilerplate. That's what you always say.
I think we're ready.
Just to signal the man in the corner. I'd like to call this meeting of the Planning Board, Cpdc, to order if I could. Present are Heather Klisch, Tony, you don't know how to pronounce your last name, and do we have anybody else?
Nick and John are both remote as well.
Okay. Okay, good. Julie, if you could give us the rundown on, hello Nick, the rundown on how we'll hold the meeting, that would be great.
Sure, yeah, so welcome to the CPDC meeting of Monday, September 13th. This is a Zoom meeting, which means that we have in-person capabilities as well as Zoom capabilities. We have no live audience currently, so I'm gonna skip the stuff. But typically, the way these things work for some people who are here for the sign application is that the CPDC will hear a presentation from the applicant, and then they'll have a chance to ask questions, and then anyone who's here from the public can raise their hand, let us know they want to ask questions, and we can identify them and they can chime in with public comment. So,
Sounds good.
thank you, Pam.
Okay. And we are taking one item out of order since it's on the schedule for 7:30. And that is for the continued public hearing. Do you have the text on that in front of you, Heather?
Sure. They're requesting to continue it, so I will move to continue the public hearing on the definitive subdivision application at 103 Sanborn Lane, Chimney Hill, RE LLC to October 4th
9:30
at
p.m.
9:30 p.m. Thank you.
I'll second that.
Okay, all in favor?
Maybe do his roll call.
Yep.
Yeah,
Roll call?
Will you do roll call since there's somebody
Right.
on Zoom?
yeah, please.
Yes. Heather?
Yes.
Tony? We're doing a roll call.
Yes, sorry, I was muted.
Okay. Nick?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Pam? Yes. Okay, October 4th at 9:30?
Yep.
Okay. Next order of business is the update on town meeting, November 21 town meeting.
Sign permit
Actually,
application.
sign,
Would you sign permit next?
yep, please.
Okay. All right, this is application for the sign permit for map 007, parcel 0263, otherwise known as 191 Main Street. We have a representative from the company or from the sign company, either one.
Yeah, from the sign company.
Okay.
So my name's Ed with Battle Brother Signs, and currently we're proposing a projecting sign for 191 Main Street. It's for Affiliated Financial Services. Let's see, it's going to be a non-illuminated sign, acrylic background painted white with 1/4-inch raised acrylic lettering. Non-illuminated, the dimensions 24 inches high by 48 wide. I believe those comply with the Reading zoning bylaws for projecting signage. We want to do a projecting sign for this business instead of a wall sign, just because of the building seems to be a setback a bit more from the street, and we just feel as though it would give it better visibility to both directions of traffic. Because it's a quick turn, small driveway, and a wall sign, you don't really have the opportunity to see it right until you're almost perpendicular with the building. So yeah. What
And
we're proposing.
could you tell me, if you wouldn't mind, the height of the individual letters?
I can, let's see, I don't have that in front of me. I believe they come to about 4 to 5 inches for lettering. I believe the logo is about 8 or 10 inches high. That's information I can get off the our design software for first thing in the morning for you and send it your way.
Okay, I was just wondering whether or not, if you're in the lane passing by this immediately next to that building, whether or not they'll be able to read the information that indicates what the services are. So that was what I was wondering. Okay.
Okay.
Are there other questions from the board?
I don't have questions.
Don't have any.
Well, the sign application, there's a small incorrection. Number 11, the projection height over the sidewalk you have listed as 24 inches.
Oh, that's right.
Well, it's definitely going to be higher than 2 feet off the ground. Our intention is to have it at 10 feet off the ground.
Decision does say 10 feet. The proposed, the draft decision does say 10 feet in height from the ground.
Okay.
Yep, and I did request a new application with that revised dimension as well.
Okay. I will, let's see, once I have control of my computer again, I can send it shortly. Just calling out those dimensions, the ground clearance.
The connection to the panel is fixed, it's not hinged, right?
Correct. No swinging. We don't like swinging signs because eventually they do wear out and fall. So we're pretty much a general rule of thumb is we tell customers that you want this as stationary as possible.
Is there anybody who's on the line who has any comments relative to this?
I don't think we have anyone from the public. Let me just double check.
I don't see any.
I'll say that, or I'll mention that, in the past we used to discourage either, email addresses or phone numbers put on signs.
one of the issues, and we don't necessarily discourage that anymore, but one of the issues that come up, and depending on how big that font is, maybe a concern here is, if you're driving by this at, even 20 miles an hour, if the lettering for that phone number is too small, no one's going to be able to read it, and it sort of just ends up cluttering up your sign and making the rest of your sign sort of less legible. So for the downtown where there might be people walking by, obviously you could probably read that when you're at a walking pace. But I guess I would suggest that you evaluate that of whether that makes sense to have the phone number on there, as when people are driving by. So
right, yeah. We generally recommend that you just stick with the website because people are much more likely to remember the name of a website than a 10-digit phone number. But I will pass along the suggestion again to them and see if they're open to it, because I agree, removing the phone number would allow us to at least enlarge the website where all the same information.
Yeah.
You're not gonna get any, you're just not gonna make any sales based on this sign. Someone's using this sign to find the building, and if somebody's driving by and they are interested in these kind of services, they'll remember the name and then look it up later. So we have to stop thinking in the old way. You would get a more readable sign without that bottom line. And then remember that every time that changes and you come back, we're gonna charge you the full rate to do another sign permit.
Yeah.
Valid.
Keep that in mind for them.
Screen share the decision if you feel ready for that.
It's the decision. Is this the certificate of appropriateness?
Right.
Yes.
Yep, they're on the screen.
Yep, and I updated it slightly tonight based on the new submittal.
What was updated? The version that's on the Google Drive is still the
Is
same.
currently, yep.
So what did you change?
Can I make it bigger?
If you could make it a little bit
Yeah,
bigger,
it's
my
a lot.
poor
It's too
eyes
small
can
for
see
me
it better.
too. It's too small.
There we go. Yes, perfect.
Okay, so Andrew gets the credit for writing this. I'm just gonna explain it. The basic information about when they applied, what they applied for, the materials submitted that you just looked at, plus the application, the draft certificate of appropriateness, which is herein, and then the findings. This is in the S15 zoning district, this sign. Typically, what we do with signs for businesses in S15 is we defer to the business B zoning, which is also why CPDC reviews it. So that's what we did here. They're looking for a blade sign. These are the dimensions listed for the blade sign here. And the description of the sign, which none of these things have changed based on the discussion, I don't believe.
And you checked the setback.
Right, yeah, the setbacks we added in here, they're more than 20 feet from the side lot lines, which complies with section 8561. And then conditions, we just like to remind applicants that window signage needs to comply with this section of the zoning bylaw. And then the sign needs to be designed and installed in the style, materials, and colors depicted. And this sign is non-illuminated, so they won't need an electrical permit, but they do need a building permit prior to installation, so. These are the conditions. Any comments?
No, this is fine.
Didn't see any
Right,
from
we ready to vote on this?
Let's see. Any comments, Tony? Okay.
All right, can we vote to approve the certificate of appropriateness for the sign proposal at 191 Main Street, Affiliated Financial Services?
Second.
We'll do a roll call vote. Heather?
Yes.
Tony?
Yes.
Nick?
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Pam, yes,
Great,
approved.
good.
Thank you.
We'll send you the revised, finalized certificate of appropriateness tomorrow, and don't forget to apply for a sign permit from the building commissioner.
Yep, will do, and I will send along the updated application that calls out the correct clearance height.
Excellent.
Thank you.
All right,
Thanks.
great. All right, thank you for all your time.
No problem.
Have a good night.
Have a good evening.
Okay. Next on the agenda,
So we have a few things from staff. The first one is that we got town council's edits to the zoning that will be going to November town meeting, and we just wanted to review it with you really quickly.
Good.
So I'm gonna share that. They had minor comments, they had some that were similar in line to what you were talking about last time with like new construction, maybe not being as clear as it could be. So I was actually out and Andrew went through this with Ray while I was out, but I'll do my best. I have gone over it a couple
all
times.
right, let's get this a
So-
little bit bigger on font if we could.
Yeah, again,
Sorry.
for some reason it's
One
like
point font doesn't work for me.
it likes to make it small for some reason, not my preference either. Okay, so town council thought it would be good to use the terminology dwellings as a principal use rather than saying principal structures. So that's, I don't remember if we had actually proposed to change that, but they proposed to change that. And what else did they change? Let's see here.
Is it dwelling? Well, first of all, do we have the definition? I think we have the definition of the structure. I'm pretty, gonna guess we don't have the definition of the dwelling, because I don't ever remember using that term in the zoning bylaw before. I could be completely wrong, but I don't think that.
Good question,
And
John. That's a really
what
good
jumps
point.
out to me is, what's a two-family dwelling? So, is a dwelling a unit, or is a dwelling a structure? And therefore, is a two-family dwelling a unit that two families share? Sorry.
So we actually do define dwelling. We have dwelling unit, we have dwelling multifamily, we have dwelling multifamily age restricted, dwelling single family, and dwelling two family. So I actually didn't realize that, so
Yeah, we got that all from the zoning, international zoning code has all those definitions. I think we copied them in mostly.
so if you want, I can just tell you what the definitions say.
Yeah.
So for dwelling single family, it's a detached dwelling unit arranged, intended, or designed to be occupied by only one family. And then a dwelling two family is a detached dwelling arranged, intended, or designed to be occupied by two families.
Okay.
Does it seem okay?
And then
Right.
we must have dwelling unit then, which talks about the kind of facilities that are within a dwelling.
We do,
Right.
yes, we do. For a minute there, I was nervous, we were off to a rough start.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if you guys do, but I don't recall using that term, the term dwelling. Or at least it's not used very much in our zoning bylaw, so,
Right, yeah, no, it's not. Maybe we'll have to use it more now that I know we have it.
yes.
So moving along onto the site plan triggers, we talked about new construction, and this was modified by town council to say, instead of new construction, say via the creation of new floor area. That results in the requirement for or addition of 2 or more parking spaces. So that the part they added is the creation of new floor area part, instead of new construction, right?
Yes, correct.
And we went back and forth on that the last 2 meetings, right, about kind of how we, alright.
Right.
Right, is that habitable or not? floor area can be a garage, right?
I think that the question we were contemplating before was whether it was just the creation of new floor area or also the expansion into existing floor area.
Yeah,
But we put the expansion piece down below under minor site plan.
Well, but this goes in further than that, right? It says the creation of new floor area, that results in the requirement of space. And so something about that floor area is requiring parking spaces, that means that it's occupied in some fashion.
right.
So I think it's a complete statement.
I do too. I think this is clearer. We went back and forth on, okay, what do we mean by new construction? And we intuitively knew what it meant, but this gives it, I think, a more precise definition to what that means.
So do you think this is in keeping with what you were thinking in terms of new construction? Cause I know we kind of thought about that a lot and I don't, I'm just gonna, it's hard for me when I have this tiny little screen in front of me, I can't see everybody.
It eliminates the argument that a contractor might have if they said that they were, say, working within the shell, adding a mezzanine, or doing demolition to create more space, right? Oh, it's not new construction, it's a modification or something, right? It eliminates all of that potential parsing of the language. It just says you're making more floor area that is used somehow that requires more parking, and so you're triggering this.
So this seems
It's good,
good,
it's simple.
okay,
Yeah,
alright,
Yeah.
just wanna make sure. And then here under B, they added some other different types of uses, so a structure containing, they added the word public. We had institutional, commercial, and mixed use, so they added in public, and also they changed multifamily structure to multifamily dwelling. And then instead of mixed use, they say, or a structure containing more than one use. So a change of use from any of those categories to a use permitted by special permit. Seem good?
Yeah.
Okay.
yeah,
Alright, and then they added in this clause about nothing in this section shall be construed to limit the requirements of site plan review set forth in other provisions of the zoning bylaw. So where we might encounter a specific use that says in that section it requires a site plan review, a site plan review would still be required even if it's not specifically listed here. So that's like a safety net in sorts, I guess. Did he give examples of uses for that?
He gave a lot of examples that had a special permit requirement.
I remembered that,
Yeah,
alright. Which is a separate
right.
kind of thing. I guess this is just in case there's something in the bylaw that
Mhm.
requires a site plan review that's not specifically listed here. Moving along, so then with minor site plan review, again, the increase in gross floor area that's either by the creation of new floor area, and here we have, or by the expansion of an existing use into adjacent space. They just to be consistent added that. And then I believe that B stayed the same as we had it.
This last sentence
Oh.
here under regulations.
Oh, okay. Okay, right. Oh, so then they mention, like where we say administrative approval, they want to just be sure we actually have the regulations on the books and the authority to do that, which we do. So that's listed here, section 4631 gives us that authority. And we have regulations for how we handle minor site plan review that sit outside and separate from the zoning bylaw. And then here for C, it's the same list of uses, so the public use, the multifamily dwelling, and then the structure containing more than one use. So it's the same as what we saw above. But here, it's to a use permitted by right. So they changed this, right? Did they change this? It was provided to if, or did we change it?
He changed that, he added the change of use capitalized, I
Okay, yeah, so
believe.
he capitalized change of use and then he took away the word provided?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So it was provided that and now it's,
Now it's
okay.
if the proposed.
A use permitted by right, I know that we all know what that means. Is that defined or that explained someplace else in zoning?
Where are you looking, sorry?
The last section that was modified.
This one?
Yeah, yeah. Do people that don't know zoning know what that means?
I believe so. We can look and see if it's in section 5, if it's clear.
Yeah, the table of uses states a yes, that's right.
Yeah, so under section 5 in the table of uses, we say in the explanation that in the tables, the word yes denotes a use permitted by right.
Okay,
So that is terminology that we use in the bylaw.
okay.
So those are the changes. And the select board votes on the warrant tomorrow night, I think. Today's Monday.
Yes.
Does anyone have any other comments or questions about
This is
this?
good.
Yeah, I like that, the change in new construction,
I knew you would.
text, yeah.
I'm kind of feeling silly that we couldn't come up with it, but it's
I
fine.
know.
It's good. I think we worked on it too late at night.
Great. So 2 things pertaining to this is that we need you to vote to recommend it to town meeting, because I don't believe we did that last time. And then we need to talk about who might want to give us the presentation at town meeting, which I will prepare the presentation, and then one of you lovely people can present it to town meeting members.
Okay, so we should have a vote on this. Vote to approve,
Vote to recommend
recommend,
to town meeting.
vote to recommend this for town meeting.
Okay, so I'll move that we that we recommend our zoning bylaw amendment to section 4.6, site plan review and minor site plan review to town meeting for the November 20, sorry, this is the most botched thing ever, but for the November 2021 subsequent town meeting. Did you get that?
I got that.
I'll second that.
All in favor, roll call vote. Heather?
Yes.
Tony?
Yes,
John?
yes,
Nick?
Yes,
Pam, yes.
Great,
Excellent.
thank you, everybody. And we don't have to decide now, and we can decide offline and you can think about it, if you
And
don't
when
wanna.
does it have to be
So
presented?
town meeting starts on November 8th, which is a Monday, I believe.
Yes.
And I believe that the warrant has this as Article 6 currently. That could change, and they don't always take things in order, but
Sometimes take consent of order.
we would anticipate probably the first night.
Do you know happen to know if town meeting's gonna be all in person or if it'll be hybrid again?
That's a detail I actually don't know yet.
Me neither.
And the
I was
judge,
talking to the moderator last week at a race and he was saying it sounds like it's gotta be some sort of hybrid.
okay.
Okay.
Yeah, and I haven't actually looked to see what Articles 1 through 5 contain specifically, so I cautiously, optimistically say it'll be the first night. So November 8th.
And you'll,
I'll just say that I am gonna be out of town that week. Not that I couldn't do it remotely, if that's okay, but, I won't be in Reading.
Okay. The other thing that we have for you all to fight over is an update to town meeting on what's happening with the 40R process, and potential zoning for April town meeting. So, I will be putting together a report that will be included in the warrant report that kind of outlines the process that we're going through right now and some of the upcoming dates and community engagement meetings and like what we're thinking and what we've done and outlines that all, but someone from CPDC should give a report to town meeting, acknowledging the fact that we have received 2 instructional motions and we are cognizant of that and working on it, and we do still hope to bring something to April town meeting.
Yeah.
So that's another thing. Again, we'll prepare and you can be the face of it for town meeting.
I'm going to be in town. I just need to check and make sure that I don't have conflicts at home that would prevent me from staying up late at town meeting if need be.
Right. Okay. And so we do have another meeting on October 4th. So if you all want to think about it and then just let me know on October 4th. I would hope to have the presentation ready for previewing sometime around then. Although that agenda now that we had all these continuances is getting full. And we also do at some point want to talk about the 40R bylaw as well, which Andrew and I have been working on. So actually, let me segue into that since I already started. Might as well keep going.
Perfectly done.
So we've been working with MAPC, the Metropolitan Area Planning Council, to try to sort of expand our capacity since we have so much else going on. And to try to understand better what the concerns are in the community and figure out how we can take sort of the vision that we're hearing and make it into something workable in the zoning bylaw. We did the debrief from the zoning workshop, which we went through in August, and we took all that feedback and Andrew and I started thinking of some ideas and what we're looking to do is next week actually MAPC is going to help us by hosting a focus group with about 15 stakeholders who we've heard from and who attend things consistently and provide feedback to kind of get a better sense of like what kind of open space they want and how that might work in the downtown and not necessarily on the lot by lot level. Just so we can really start to craft that kind of take like that approach to it, like versus focusing specifically and only on what we can do to tweak lot coverage and setbacks and things like that, like actually talk about achievable open space and ways that zoning tools can be a mechanism to achieve that vision. And then we're working with them on a survey that kind of asks some broader questions about the downtown and goes back and talks about the 3 things: open space, lot coverage, parking. A little bit less of a focus on parking since I think that's on hold for now. While the Parking Advisory and Recommendations Committee does their work, but a broader survey that we would get to a broader audience to try to understand, are the concerns we're hearing held by the town as, you know, a greater proportion of the town, or just to get a sense of, are we do people in town think the downtown smart growth district is working or not, and to also get just additional opinions and feedback. And then Andrew and I have been working behind the scenes to try to kind of figure out how we take what we've heard and like work it into the bylaw. And we will want to talk to you about that. We haven't, we don't want to totally put the cart before the horse, but we are running out of time. So it's like, and then we also have huge agendas and things that we try to puppeteer that just like we learned last Wednesday and Thursday aren't going to happen tonight. So like, we're just kind of always ready to jump and try to do something else and make your agendas work. And anyway, so I've just talked a lot, but so those are the 2 things that are coming up soon. The focus group next week, which you aren't expected to attend at all. And then the survey, which I think is going to launch around October 1st. And then we are planning on Tuesday, October 19th, which I know now is going to be the week of special town meeting. So that's a little tricky, and I hope I'm not breaking that news to anyone here who's on town meeting. But there's a special town meeting planned for October 18th. But so October 19th, community engagement around development trade-offs, housing demands, trends and pressures, economics, the market, commercial square footage, kind of all the different competing priorities that developers face when they're trying to like make redevelopment projects work, understanding that. And then right back on November 3rd, another community engagement evening, which will talk about how we can use the zoning tools that we have to further advance the vision that we're hearing, that we're kind of, the vision that we're taking from the feedback that we're hoping to ratify, like in the survey and in the focus group, like here's what we're hearing, do people agree with this? And turn that into something in zoning that can be a zoning, that we can bring to town meeting. So,
May I ask, how are you going to get the survey out? Are you
So-
gonna do it town-wide or put it, throw it out in the wind or put it in the newspaper
no,
or
we
what?
have a lot of ways of doing it. We've
Okay.
done actually a lot of surveys in the last few years. Actually, we just did one at the Fall Street Fair.
Oh, did you?
Did you?
It was led by the park. We did a lot of, we helped, I shouldn't say we, Andrew and Jean to the rescue, helped them get that one out. But we have a lot of ways, we have a lot of email lists, we can do QR codes with postcards, we can blast the businesses, we can do a code red and let the whole town know, we can send it in the mail, we can, there's a lot of things we can do, so.
Economically.
Yeah, that one's not as economic, but we'll do our standard like whole host of ways of getting it out. We did one a couple of years ago where Andrew and Aaron actually went to the train and like gave it to commuters, and so we have a big bag of tricks for surveys. So that's that. MAPC wants us to have a placeholder date on December 1st, which is a Wednesday, I think, in case like the November 3rd turnaround is too quick for them. So if you wouldn't mind putting that on your calendar, we do have, I forgot what the December meeting is.
Where's that typically held?
So these will be over Zoom.
Okay.
These are gonna be over Zoom. And then we are hoping to have the public hearing for any zoning amendments, including the public hearing for the floodplain amendment, which we're gonna talk about at the first meeting in January. I don't think we could feasibly do it any sooner than that. And then, but the trick is also the DHCD part with any changes to the downtown smart growth district, the Department of Housing and Community Development has to approve them. So we are hoping to run that kind of parallel because there's like no way to do it sequentially, I don't think, and have it be done in time. We have been in communication with DHCD. They're understaffed, I don't want to say overworked, very busy. And
Overextended.
they don't have an incentive necessarily to get back to us right away when we're talking about tweaking. If we were talking about expanding the district, we'd probably hear from them right away. We're talking about changing it, so we're not getting the response we're used to getting from them. We do a lot of hounding, and so we're hoping that's not a sign of what's to come. But like that has been our reality the last few months of contacting them, that we haven't heard from them very expeditiously. So we're gonna do our best to get something on the town meeting warrant for April.
Alright.
So that's the plan. Any comments, ideas?
No, it sounds like a good plan to me.
Okay.
Busy.
Yeah.
If you guys think of any specific questions you want to ask in the survey, please let us know by the end of the week, I guess, but
Are you asking similar questions to what was done in the community forums already? I'm trying to remember what those questions were.
They were
More discussion questions, so,
they were
Yeah.
fairly broad.
yeah.
You know what, so MAPC asked us today if we want to loop you guys in to give feedback on the survey. And so if one of you wants to help review and look at it, that'd be good. I hesitate, our next meeting's not till October 4th, and we wanna get the survey out before then, and it's not ready today to look at. But that doesn't mean that you can't be involved if you want to, and
No,
maybe
loop me in for
designate a
sure.
person to look at it. It probably would be a good thing. I know you have jobs and full-time jobs and families and lots of other commitments, so I always hesitate to put more on the volunteers than you already have on your plates, but
I'd like to be looped into that,
Okay,
for sure.
there you go.
What do you think the follow-up is on the survey to the respondents? You know, I'm wondering if we should ask a bunch of loaded questions as well, to show people how little they actually know or understand about the process. Not that they should necessarily know a lot about the process, because it's complex but you know, the questions we get at meetings sometimes, why is the town building all these apartments? Well, the town is not building any apartments, right? Like, what's the difference between 40B and 40R? Nobody understands that,
Yeah, so
right?
we have an outline of what the survey might look like, and it includes like a lot of text and sort of background information and images, and we're trying to like, it's been tricky. We're trying to walk that line between like, we need people to feel like educated enough to give us real answers. Like, I know I'm frustrated when I get surveys and I'm like, well, I don't know anything about that topic and I don't feel like my answer would be helpful. But then if it's too much, we don't want people to not do it because they're bogged down by too much information. So it's kind of a fine line, and I don't really know the answer to that, but we're hoping to review a draft in the next week or so and then figure out what amount of text and background seems like the right amount, because we have a lot of background. We have a lot of stuff we can work with. And we do know that like we can't just give a blind survey to people who don't like. There's so many terms I just threw out there, like DSGD, DHCD, 40B, 40R. Like people don't have this jargon in their heads, and like we do, and
We
like
have trouble spelling CPDC.
yeah, it's maybe not the easiest thing to have a survey about. But we don't want to be too broad and too unspecific. You know, like we want to, I don't know.
Can I ask, like, what do you hope to get out of the survey?
Yeah, so I mean, I think the main goal of the survey would be to understand if the broader community agrees that what's going on downtown needs to be modified, tweaked. You know, because we hear from a lot of people, like we hear from a lot of the same people a lot of the time, and to just understand like, is the downtown really broken from the broader community perspective? Maybe that's not the nicest way I could have worded that, but you know, like this vision that we've heard from the people who came to the workshop and who've been involved, can they ratify this vision? Is this, like we want to bring something to town meeting that feels like it'll get broad support from the community and not necessarily just from a few people.
Yep.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
So.
Yeah, I'm thinking about the types of questions, and I don't know if MAPC has already asked, like this is a little bit of thinking out loud. I don't know if for that we want to start, from the very beginning of, do you agree that that new residential development as it happens should happen near transit centers and shops? Maybe this is getting Nick to some of the loaded questions that you were asking, or, what do you want to see in a downtown? Do you want to see, this is not the right survey question, but something that gets at, do you want to see vibrant businesses? Some things that I think we can agree on, and then maybe get to some of the nuances of what it means for the zoning requirements or allowances that we have in the 40R district without talking about, without saying 40R too often.
Right.
Because that gets confusing, right?
Right.
And if it's an online survey, it's gonna be an online survey, right? You may have the opportunity to kind of between some questions, share some information about, within the parameters of what, I don't know, share some information about what having this overlay district means for Reading, that we can, without, there are incentives, it allows us to concentrate development rather than spread it out. I don't know, there are opportunities to also share information as people are going through some of the questions.
Right, and I think from what I can gather from the outline that we've seen, that's what the plan is, to kind of go through and kind of walk people through some of these and give some education.
Yeah.
about what it has meant for Reading, you know,
I'd be confident that, you know, MAPC, they're all good professional planners. They'll get to the right set of survey questions without leaving too much.
Yeah.
You know, I guess as long as they understand what it is that what we're after, or, yeah.
how would you, if you could state what we're after, like, how would you, tell us what we're after? In your mind.
I think that you said it well, in that trying to understand, the support, townwide, of the, pace and style of development in downtown. And are there other attributes, that people would rather see, understanding, and this is the thing, is understanding the trade-offs that those, you know, other aspects of development may come with. And, you know, right, no one needs to be specific about what those trade-offs are, but, right, you know, these surveys, where, you know, that ask for, you know, preferences, to me, don't really get very far, because, right, everyone wants everything, you know, and so I think that we do need to make sure that it's understood that there's, you know, that there's trade-offs. And I'm sure that MAPC would, right, because this isn't a visioning, right, this isn't a visioning survey where you can, you know, it is mom and apple pie kind of thing. This is to get into the nitty gritty, right?
Yeah, that's right. Okay, I just wanted to make sure we're on the same page as you. I probably should have done that before now, but yeah.
No, we don't want anything that's so open-ended that they'll say, oh yeah, we'd love to have a carousel in the green.
Right.
We all would, right?
Yeah, like we're kind of past that. Like we all know we all want that now. My daughter especially, she would love that. Okay, so that's. Did I go over everything?
I think you did.
Okay. All right. So we're gonna try to schedule some time in on your October and November agendas to talk about what we're thinking in terms of that zoning. And to give you, we'll obviously give you an update on what we hear from the focus group and information we're getting from the survey, and try to keep you in the loop that way. And if Heather and Pam wanna help with the survey, that's great. We're supposed to be getting a draft in the next week.
Yep, I'd like to see it certainly.
Okay, that would be great, yeah. Let me just write this down so I don't forget.
And did you want to be my second?
Sure, I can do that. I can help out with that.
Excellent, all right. So should we get into floodplain? Or should we continue? I guess we're getting close to 8:30, we're not quite at 8:30 yet. All right, so let me. What did I do with it? Where did I save it? Alright. Just give me 1 second. Alright, so I'm gonna screen share it, and as you know from prior meetings, we need to update our floodplain overlay district bylaw to remain in compliance with the National Flood Insurance Program. I have been working with our regional coordinator on updating the bylaw. She's been really helpful, which is awesome. And so I think we should start there and go through that piece first. And why isn't it? Yeah, okay, here it is. So basically, isn't it showing only changes? Hold on 1 second. I'm such a dinosaur. All right, let me just make it show it all. Okay. So she went through and made some basic changes. And I'll just go through them. Actually, this one I realized today, I think she meant 2014 instead of 2016, so I'm just gonna make a note to myself on that. I think it's a typo here. But that's basically the date of our latest flood insurance rate maps. We need to cite that in here. I guess we no longer need to specify which map panels apply to Reading. So that when they change, like we don't have a bylaw that's out of date. And then there are a number of definitions that we can either get rid of and replace with new definitions, or we can just get rid of altogether, or we can modify. So they no longer use these terms to talk about the flood zones. The flood zones have different terms, and they have actually for, I don't know, a lot of years. I feel like a lot of years have gone by since that's been the case. So it'd be good to update those, and the definition for that's further down. And then here in development, she just added a note here that it should include storage of equipment or materials. She clarified that our district is our overlay district, all good things. And then we no longer need a definition of floodway. Floodway map and flood boundary, because we have what our maps are called are the flood insurance rate maps. And then actually one point of clarification, so for some reason it's calling us both author, so I put JM for me and the NFIP coordinator NFIP, so just so I would be able to keep track of whether it was my idea or hers and whether it needs to happen or not. And we can get rid of the hazard boundary map definition. And then like floodway, the definition's been clarified here to include creek. And then basically like the floodway needs to be preserved in such a way that the base flood elevation doesn't increase beyond a certain height. And then there's a few additional definitions here that we need to add. So functionally dependent uses. Now I can't really explain a lot of these things, but I didn't, since she just added it and it wasn't a change like to a definition really, I didn't really look at it yet to get super educated on it. That can happen in the lead up to town meeting. But these are all things we need to add. Highest adjacent grade, historic structure. I'll just keep going and then you can stop me if I'm going too fast or if you want to talk about something. Then she did highlight a number of definitions we have that are actually regulated under the building code, and so we could remove them. And I guess this one she actually said if the building code changes, then this definition would be incorrect. And so there's probably a few examples of that, and so this is one we could just remove if you agree. To remove things that are actually covered under the building code. So we can talk about that later. Now here she actually has a definition for what new construction means. I thought that was kind of funny. But this is, pursuant to floodplain and floodplain management. 100-year flood, we can get rid of that because that's covered under the new flood zone terminology. Recreational vehicle is something that's added that we need to regulate. I think those are in the floodplain. They have certain restrictions on what can be parked and when and how temporary it needs to be and all that. Special flood hazard areas, we actually don't have any. We don't have any like wave action or like velocity action, at least yet, in town. So we can
Go ahead.
we can actually remove most of that definition. And she took some of the language out here, because we don't need to talk about purposes for flood insurance. All right, and then some new definitions, substantial repair of a foundation, so that's more specified, and then what a variance means in terms of floodplain regulations, violations. And then here's where we break down the definitions of the different zones. So these are the new terms, A, AE, AH, zone AO, B, C, and X. And then she mentions that they actually don't require us to have these definitions. Actually, these are the old ones, never mind. So we can get rid of those again if you want. Okay, and then we have a section about the designation of the community floodplain administrator. I'm still trying to figure out who that is in town. I think it's probably the building commissioner. I just haven't had a chance to ask him about that. But once I know that, I'll fill that in here. Just the basically the requirement that we designate somebody, and then what kind of, how we deal with the permit process, when permits are required, and how we deal with the process. And then reference to existing regulations. So this just talks about other codes and regulations that regulate structures within the floodplain. So the building code does, the Wetlands Protection Act, inland wetlands restrictions under the DEP. And then there's SDS systems, so subsurface disposal sanitary sewage systems have certain requirements. And then here we have the zoning bylaw, and then the wetlands, the local wetlands protection bylaw as well. And then what do you do if you want a variance to the building code floodplain standards? Here's that laid out here, how someone would go through that process. And variances from local zoning bylaws, and different requirements that need to be met according to the state law, for someone to get a variance to town compliance with our national flood insurance, with the National Flood Insurance Program. So, okay, again, here, this section I highlighted because this is in a separate document. This is the section that we have locally that determines what kind of uses we allow in the floodplain district. And I thought we can talk about that separately and decide if that's something we want to look into further, or if we just want to deal with the compliance piece at this point. Either way is totally fine with us. And then we have a section about, like, if someone can prove that they're not in a flood zone, then they can potentially get a permit to do something. And that's actually that's language that I've seen in a lot of other towns, and I think it's referring to the letter of map amendment process, which is a FEMA process where you basically prove that you're not in a flood zone with your own flood study and engineering and all that. And I've seen that happen. It's actually quite common that happens. But since we don't reference the LOMA in here, I think she's like not 100% sure that's what we meant by this. And she's recommending that we might want to take it out anyway. And it's covered, I believe it's covered somewhere else in here. But if it's not, we can figure that out. So let's see. She took out this whole section of conditions for approval for uses permitted, because they have some new language, and I guess some of it's outdated, old, not relevant, and they have new language that she wants us to use. So actually, she just mostly took them out, and then left some of the ones that are still applicable, but she took out a lot of ones that are not, or that are in direct conflict with the building code. And then there's one here that I said we need to talk about, so what's that one? Okay. Yeah, so a more simple process, like so if you're unfamiliar with the floodplain, A and AE are like the regulatory floodplain. And A are areas that don't have a base flood elevation established, so they haven't done like stream studies and determined where that seasonal high water mark is and all of those terms and things, right? And AE is where there is a base flood elevation established. And so if someone wanted to do something in an A zone, there's a process by which they prove what the base flood elevation is and what data they need to use. And so we can simplify the language that we have around that to match it up with the model floodplain bylaw from the state. And so that's what she's suggesting here. And she believes that the model is a more simple approach than what we have on the books currently. So, right. There's a couple things I need to follow up with her on, but she mentions there's a section here that's encouraging fill. Which section is that? Right here, which is not allowed. And so she's also recommending we just strike that section, so we could just do that. But I need to talk to her about a couple things anyway, so I wanted to follow up with her after I talk to you in case there's more things you want me to ask about. And then another thing that we have that is required in the building code that we can remove from the bylaw. So is that, oh, there's more, okay. Okay, and so then she notes that there's a direct conflict here with the Wetlands Protection Act, so we should take that part out. And again, more things that are regulated by the building code that we can remove. She put in here, okay. And then, she added recreational vehicles because that's a new section that we need, a new thing that we need to regulate. And then she put it in this list, which I think is appropriate. And then there's some language around subdivision proposals that we haven't had in the bylaw that we need to include. And so I put that in this section because it seems like a good place to put it. But I'll have her review anything that we have. Once we get it more finalized, I'll have her give a final review so that we don't miss anything or put something in a place where it would end up being hard to enforce later or something like that. Okay. And then here's where she talks about, we talk about base flood elevation and floodway data and the different data that we would need to use. And some new language, let's see. Okay, yeah, so this is, let's just strike this section and add some new language that references the zones and the different base flood elevation data and firm map flood insurance rate maps to use. So then it's some contact information for people at the state in Region 1. And we're removing this section because it's outdated, and we mentioned the maps in the up above, and then a few new sections to add all together. So the requirement to submit new technical data. So basically, if we get more updated information than FEMA has in terms of our well, this one says special flood hazard areas, which we don't have, but the basic gist is we need to give it to them so they can incorporate it into our mapping and into their program. And then just abrogation and greater restriction. So this takes precedence over less restrictive and or conflicting local laws, ordinances, and codes. And disclaimer of liability. It's considered reasonable but does not imply total flood protection. And then the severability section. So seems unlikely that this would happen, but if it's deemed unconstitutional, the rest of the bylaw is still effective. So these are all the sections we need to include in the new definitions and things we need to change. Thoughts?
So it sounds like we have a little bit more work to do on this.
Yeah.
Taking out sections, defining others. So we're not at a point where we can rule on this tonight?
No, I mean, this is just honestly like Wednesday, we were like, okay, we're pivoting our agenda to talk about floodplain. And it's good to have a deadline because this was on my long list of things to do, so. This is just starting the conversation. We'll have the hearing in January.
Okay.
We can easily get it ready by then.
All right, and you also had comparison with text from other communities.
Yeah, I thought maybe we should talk about this first, if there's any questions. So there's two parts, right? There's the part to bring us into compliance with the National Flood Insurance Program. And then there's the other part, which we don't have to do, we can do, or we don't have to do. And that's the part where we could make uses within certain areas more permissive. Uses where certain areas of town are covered with floodplain, but not also wetlands. And are also considered priority development areas in town and have industrial and business potential, we could allow for more. And so that's a conversation we should have. Do we want to just tackle the compliance part, or do we want to try to do both? Should we only do compliance and never do the other part? How do you feel about that? So.
Well, go ahead.
I'll just throw out there that to help answer the question of the other part of should we open more of the floodplain up to development where maybe there's not wetlands, I would love to see a comparison with anything that was gleaned from the municipal vulnerability preparedness study. I don't know, but I'm thinking that might be helpful to show us that with the predictions of increased storms
Sea level.
and intensity of storms, I'd love to know kind of if we have the information, what's predicted for the future in our floodplain to help inform whether and how much we move toward opening it up to development. And if the MVP process gave us that information, let's use it.
Suggestion.
I would say, Heather, on that, I think what we first need to do, and we looked at this briefly at one meeting, I'm not sure whether you were in attendance or not, but the land area that we're talking about that isn't covered by, that is covered by floodplain, but not by, that still can be developed on we're talking about one parcel or a very small area in town.
Yeah,
Unless, of course, the natural flood, maps change again. And so I guess my question to this group would be, in order of priorities in terms of, how much time we spend on that, we've got to keep it in mind how big of an area we're talking about.
I agree with that, and I do kind of remember looking at the area and recognizing that it was a relatively small area, and then maybe asking ourselves, is it a small but important area? I don't know.
Right. So, I'm not making any judgment value on that. I just remember that it was a small area. I'd hate for us to spend, lots of hours on this area that probably doesn't have a big impact for us.
Yeah.
Well, doesn't this include DPW?
Can you say that out loud? Sorry, what was the question, Nick?
DPW.
I guess I'm concerned that one of the parcels or one of the locations is around the DPW garages, which is potential development area.
Yeah, so let me just zoom in. So we have this map that shows, so wetlands are shown here. Can you see this, Pam?
Yes.
So wetlands are like the little green marshy looking
Yep.
symbol. And then the blue, this map is only showing zones A and AE, which are the regulatory floodplain. It's not showing any of the other information from the floodplain layer, just to make it cleaner to read. So the area this would primarily unlock, or maybe solely, exclusively unlock, is this area where it's the Frayne Corporation building and then a little bit of the DPW garage, although there are wetlands right here too. So, the wetlands are also come with buffers and different regulations in the different buffers too. So that should be noted, right? We wouldn't be unlocking maybe as much as shown as on here. We'd have, there's the buffers as well. So it's a small amount of space. It's, I think it is an important part of town. But, it's not for me to decide. Let me show you the rest of the town so you can just
Don't we
see.
have another stretch in parallel to Main Street? That's wetlands or
Yeah.
some sort of a river? Where is that?
So there are some wetlands back here behind like Cross Street and behind the new residential building that's going up. There's a lot of wetlands throughout town, right? So they have the Wetlands Protection Act and the local wetlands bylaw protecting them. I'm gonna zoom out really quick so you can see. But the areas, there's a little area here that's floodplain but not wetlands. I'm trying to think if that's like what that's developed with currently. Is that
That's,
is that the REI facility? Is that where REI is?
yeah,
Okay.
right behind REI, and then
Right.
the other buildings there are 55, I think, it's a 55 and older, multifamily development there. It's all
Oh, is it
wooded.
Meadow
in there.
Glen or Meadow,
Yeah.
what's that called? Maplewood,
Maplewood, I think.
not Meadow Glen, Maplewood. Okay, and then let me just see, I guess that's the edge of the map. So going up, around town, really the wetlands and the floodplain are very much coincident almost everywhere else. And we could add, like if there were any concerns about being too permissive throughout town, we could add restrictions about allowing more uses in certain zones only, right? So maybe not also in residential zones, only in business and industrial. And even over here, so the dashed line area that you see here, is that clear for you, Nick and John? Like, can you see that
Yep.
there's like a hash mark? So
Yep,
that's
yep.
actually the floodway, so that's actually like the water course, and that cannot be altered at all. So that's like completely off limits. So it's really, there's really not a lot of floodplain that doesn't also have wetlands in town.
So it really is that one spot down there,
Right.
sort of like DPW frame.
Right.
Which I guess I agree, that is, that's an important, an area that we should consider and understand what can be done if the rules are changed. That's my thought. Julie, can I go back to something though? When you were going through all of those items that the NFIP staff person had recommended making changes, were those recommendations so that it complies with or recommended changes so that it becomes more similar to the state, to the
Model bylaw?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, this is needed for compliance with the program, so if they receive claims from people in Reading, we have a bylaw that's in compliance. I'll have to look up specifically like what the ramifications would be if we're not. I should have looked into that today at night. We had a presentation from her last year and she kind of laid it all out for us. This is not a nice to have, this is like a must do. That was my understanding.
Well, so the one thing that I'm gonna suggest that we could get pushback from at town meeting is actually, because it's new, is restricting storage of recreational vehicles. Right, we did not have that before. There are probably not a lot of parcels that have space to store recreational vehicles that are also in floodplain. But in my quick look, there's a handful that could. I guess I would just want to understand directly from them, right? Is that to come into compliance if we have to do that and have no choice, or is this to come in to match the state recommended bylaw?
Okay, I can ask that. I'm pretty sure that's for compliance, but I will ask Joy about that. So do you think the way that it's defined would be problematic for the people that are potentially doing this currently?
I need to go back and
Yeah.
look at.
So it
Yeah, who
says,
keeps track of that? It's now in our bylaw. Who's keeping track of that? Who's finding them? Like, what's that whole process? I'm not
Right.
making any judgments on whether I want that or not. I'm just saying I can see that particular component being a sticking point.
I think we should look into exactly what the implications are. It's a really good point, and I'm on, I guess, page 9 of the PDF, where what's suggested sounds to me like storing an RV that then you're going to go take camping on the weekend because it's fully licensed and highway ready is okay. The requirement that it's on site for less than 180 days, or that it's like up on blocks and elevated, or that it's fully licensed and highway ready. So for the people who have campers and they're just storing them, this sounds like that's okay. It seems like this is targeted toward kind of more permanent-ish dwellings in recreational vehicles. Am I reading that correctly? I think it's a good point, John, to be really aware of the things that are new or people would give pushback on.
wondering actually if this should be that. Anyway. Yeah, I was just looking at the definition. The definition, let me just go back to that for a second. Where was it? Oh, under R, probably. Okay, so it says and, so does that mean it has to be all of these things? So built on a single chassis, 400 square feet or less when measured at the largest horizontal projection, designed to be self-propelled or permanently towable by a light-duty truck, and designed primarily not for use as a permanent dwelling, but as temporary living quarters for recreational camping, travel, or seasonal use. So John, do you think that there's a lot of this happening in town?
Yeah, that's an RV. I mean,
It's an
I don't know if there's a lot or not, but that's an RV.
In the floodplain
Or-
areas?
Well, I don't know,
Okay,
but I have no idea, actually. I have no idea whether it's in the floodplain, but to those people whose property is in the floodplain, basically what's being told to them through this is you're not allowed, if you do have an RV, to store it in the back part of your property.
Except that, John, it says that if it's fully licensed and highway ready, it can be stored there. And I'm looking at not the definition,
Right.
but what can actually be done with it. And it says basically that, I'm kind of reading it backwards here, but that unless it's licensed and highway ready, and unless, or it's going to be on the site for less than 180 days, then it must be elevated and anchored. I'm kind of reading it backwards, but I think that what this means is that the people who have campers and they're being stored, or RVs and they're stored, because they're highway ready, they can be towed away at any moment. I'm kind of looking at the rationale for this, that would be okay. Am I reading that correctly?
So we actually have a requirement that people are not allowed to store vehicles on their property unless they're licensed and registered. We already kind of have that in
Yeah.
place. This one requires that it's elevated and anchored as well.
Unless, or that it's licensed and highway ready, right?
Oh, I see. Yeah, there is an or right there, isn't there? So
No.
or be on the site for less than 180 consecutive days, or be fully licensed and highway ready.
Right, so all the RVs that are fully licensed, highway ready, that are just being stored, I don't think this impacts one's ability to store that even in a floodplain zone.
What I don't know, because I don't own one and never have, but, you know, do you, during the winter, do you insure, you know, like those 5-wheel ones? Do you insure it and license it all winter long if you're not gonna use it? I mean,
I don't know.
we probably need to understand the
Yeah.
ramifications of this.
Right.
Well, the funny thing about it is that they are just a trailer.
Right,
So when you register them, you're registering them as a trailer, the same as a little utility 4x8. Same registration.
oh, really?
Really. You would insure it because it's far more expensive than a little utility trailer. But yeah, so killing the registration, it doesn't buy you much. It buys you
Okay.
$30 a year maybe, savings. It's not worth it.
Okay.
I can definitely get more information on that for you guys.
Yeah, and Julie, sort of how it lines up with, you know, our restriction for keeping vehicles, unlicensed vehicles on properties as well.
Yep. Okay. And then it is a good question, like especially with the 180 days and like who's overseeing this. But I can look into all
Yeah.
these things. All right. And are there any other sections that you think could be problematic or that you want more information for?
The floodplain administrator.
Sure.
So yeah. So the way that I read this is that by this floodplain overlay district, right, that we are now, as written, we're now incorporating the permit review checklist directly into zoning. And I'm not sure we do that anywhere else. So we may want to think about that.
Do you mean this section here? Where it mentions
Yes.
the
Yeah.
permit, the checklist, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like, I've always viewed those as helpful, but not, you know, not required for you all to, you know, for town staff to maintain. But this would make it sort of mandatory because now we're wrapping it into zoning. And maybe we have elsewhere, I just can't recall.
So are we, just by the simple fact that they're mentioning that there's a checklist, like we don't actually have a checklist in here?
It says the proponent must acquire all necessary permits and must submit the completed checklist demonstrating that all necessary permits have been acquired. So if they must do that, then we must have a checklist for them to complete, right?
Right, but I guess what I'm saying is this is just mentioning that we have a checklist and we can have a checklist, that's fine.
Right.
We need to produce it.
So I'm not
But-
sure what the concern is.
But the must is what I guess the thing that I'm having a problem with.
Okay,
It's fine to reference that we have a checklist and they ought to use that to understand. I also, I guess, it's weird to me, it's odd to me that through the floodplain bylaw, we are then, I think, are we overreaching here to say that in order to be, to get, that you have to get all other permits in order to comply with the floodplain overlay district? So the floodplain overlay district then incorporates every other permit that they may, property may be required to get. To me, that's odd to be that overarching. I mean, it's true, they need to get that, but they're all individual permits. I'm not sure why this one is, you know,
yeah,
states it down.
right.
And my other comments, it's really written like a state standard, like we're referencing our own zoning bylaw in our zoning bylaw, where it lists, yeah.
We already do that. That's like not changing, but yeah.
Well, that's odd, right? We're referencing as a reference, our zoning bylaw within the bylaw.
I wonder when the last time this was updated.
But I would be all for, you know, eliminating as many references, you know, and sort of repetitive legalese that this is turned into. Like a number of places you said that we need to keep this definition. Anyone that's going to understand this segment, this portion of the bylaw is not going to need those definitions.
So you're in favor of removing all the definitions she said we should remove?
Yes.
And the ones that potentially conflict with the building code? Or
Yes.
are covered under the building code?
Yeah, because
okay.
It's only going to be a professional or someone that's well versed in floodplains that's going to read this and understand it.
Okay. Do you guys all agree with that? Because that's what I'll do for the next version. I'll just get rid of all that stuff. Okay. Great.
We're moving far away from our goal from a couple of years ago of our easily understood zoning bylaw with this.
But with all the stuff we're removing from it.
Maybe.
I looked at a lot of bylaws and some of them were really quite simple. And I don't know if they're necessarily in compliance or not, but they did include some of the sections that were recommended for us, but then they didn't include like a lot of other stuff. So yeah, ours is many pages longer than many towns near here.
So is there more we can do to simplify it but still be in compliance?
I'll ask Joy. Like first let me just actually do a clean version that takes away all the stuff and then we can see what that looks like. And then I can see if there's more that we don't need. Yeah. And so John, are you opposed, like if there are certain things that are needed for compliance and then other things that are just to bring us into alignment with the model bylaw, are you opposed to being in alignment with the model bylaw for any specific reason or?
No, not necessarily. I'm going to guess the model bylaw is written so that it's a little more solid than ours. I guess what I want to understand is those areas where where things are being, restrictions are being added or refined, that we understand whether this is, whether this additional restriction is required by the state, or whether this is being integrated in there because that's sort of the best practice.
Right. Right.
You know, I don't recall exactly what the historic, right now we have a whole definition of, you know, historic properties, and you know, I don't know what the nexus is between needing definition for historic properties in the floodplain, but you know, it's those sort of things. Like, are we now governing historic properties more so under the floodplain than we did in the past? And do we really need to be doing that?
Okay.
No judgment. I'm not making a judgment, but
Right.
someone has to stand in front of town meeting, and someone with a historic house is going to, you know, question why they now can't do something. You know, it's one answer if it's the state says this is the way it has to be, and you're already covered this way. We're just writing it down. It's another thing if we're actually adding restrictions.
Yep.
And that's what's not clear to me.
Yep. Okay. Just looking to see what we have here for the definition. Wonder where, do you remember where we had that, like, so it's defined and where is it mentioned in the bylaw? I'm trying to
I was
remember.
gonna just look and see if I could find where it's mentioned.
I do think it's funny that we have a reference to, what is it? It's the use that's typically associated with ports and navigable waterways.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have that. We now have a definition for that, and I challenge anyone to find a place that would ever be used in Reading. But
Here in the town of Headwaters, and you know, likewise with historic, I just did a quick search of where historic shows up. The word historic shows up in this version, and it's all in the definition, which
Okay.
without scouring it again makes me wonder.
Yeah.
If we're not actually referring to historic structures, if we really need to have that definition, lest anybody
Right.
with a historic home be put on alert that they're being regulated for something that they're not.
Okay. And so that one, and then the other
it's functionally dependent use.
oh, this one right here.
Yeah.
Docking, port facilities,
Yeah.
cargo, passenger shipbuilding. Does not include long-term storage. Okay, so yeah, so again, this one. Okay, this is very good feedback. I love this. Okay. This, okay. And if there are any others that you think that you've seen that we should, let's just go through real quick and look at them again. District, okay.
Oh, that was the other thing I was gonna say. It's somewhere in here, right? And maybe it's this new construction one, but we reference. Yeah, here. For which the start of construction commenced on or after the effective date of the first floodplain management code, regulation, ordinance, or standard adopted by the authority of jurisdiction. Like, can we figure out what that date is?
I had a note to find that date.
You did. Andrew is.
Right, and just include that date?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, great, yeah. Great,
Right,
great,
so-
love that, yeah.
Right, so Sandra does the research.
So we don't have to
once
figure it out
instead
every
of,
time.
Yeah, yeah. There may, I remember seeing it on there, but there may be other places in here where those like references to dates of codes were put into place. I thought I saw one other place.
Okay. Great. Let me just see, are there any other definitions we could get rid of?
Do we need regulatory floodway if it just says safe
Yes.
floodway?
Oh, where does it say that?
Right in the middle.
That's weird, yeah, maybe not. I think regulatory floodway is a term that's used. But yeah, we can look at that, alright. Then the zones we'll get rid of, and that's it, okay. Great, so we will work on another draft to bring back for discussion at some future meeting. Should we also continue our, I'll stop, let me save this. I'll stop sharing. Should we also continue our research into looking at the uses, and, or do you not wanna, what do you think about that?
Want to rephrase that?
So the notion of potentially allowing more redevelopment options in a small portion of town that's only constrained by floodplain and not also constrained by wetlands and that overlaps with our priority development area. Should we continue to look into changing that and maybe allowing more there, or do you not wanna go ahead with that at this time?
I think we should encourage that kind of development.
Yeah, I just think, Julie, as we look at that language, since it applies to only one or two places in town, that we should, sort of understand what the ramifications of the different language changes would be on those two or three properties,
Yep.
right? And maybe we tailor it to make sure that we, get what we allow what we want.
Okay.
Could be considered spot zoning, but I don't think so.
Yeah, I think if we write it broadly enough where it could apply to like business and industrial areas,
Right.
right, like
Exactly.
knowing that at least as it stands right now, there aren't a lot of business and industrial areas in the regulatory floodplain. I guess that's subject to change. Okay. Great, that's great. What else? We should do the continuance for 18 Woburn Street.
Thank you.
You
Got it?
are welcome.
Alright,
Yep.
I'll move to continue the hearing for the 40R plan review for 18 Woburn Street to October 4th
7:30.
at 7:30.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Yes.
Heather says yes. Tony says yes. John says yes.
Yeah.
Nick says yes. I say yes. And what time is that continuance for?
7:30 p.m.
7:30.
on October 4th. Okay.
Okay. We have come to the end.
We have minutes, our favorite part of the meetings, so. We had the June 7th and June 14th minutes ready, I had them ready.
Do you want to screen share?
Yeah. If you reviewed them beforehand, let me know if you have any comments, but I'll scroll through slowly as well.
There's a stutter on page 2, first line, to turn around. Second sentence.
Sorry, you're on the 6-7.
It's 6:14, sorry.
Okay, no worries. Should do that.
On the 6-7, second paragraph from the bottom on page 3. If it made for the site improvement is what I'm thinking it should read instead of Mr. Safina stated that he would be interested in allowing more parking changes if it made for the site improvement, so
Site
remove the
improvement.
and I'd put the word for after made for
Mhm.
the site improvement. I think that's all I have on that one.
I don't have any further changes.
I have no further changes on 6-7 either.
And I just have on page 2, second sentence, T turnaround
On 6:14.
on 6:14. Did you find that one?
I don't want to switch just yet, but I'm screen sharing. Sorry, yeah.
Um,
All set on 6-7.
Almost 7, 6, 7.
Right, pull up 16. Page 2.
very top.
What did you want to change it to?
Take out the T, capital T, and the dash. Right?
No,
No.
the T turnaround.
It's what?
T-shaped turnaround.
What are
It's
these?
a T-shaped turnaround.
Okay, so we need to have the word shaped in there.
Or maybe have
Yeah.
T capitalized,
Good.
yeah, I don't know,
T-shaped.
it's a pretty
Thank you.
standard term we use.
On page 4, there's a name that's not completed. It's 2, 3, 4th paragraph up from the, well, 4th from the bottom, Linda X. The GIS says that that's 510 belongs to Linda Antinori.
Could you spell that really quickly?
Antinor.
That was really quickly.
Okay, you said quickly. Antinoro.
Thank you, good catch.
A little thing further down the paragraph on that same page 4 that begins Mr. Lance Watson.
Mhm.
End of that line, hay bales, that's 2 words, not just 1. And when there's hay bales in the second line also.
Yep. Gotcha.
And then there's just a funky formatting thing.
I could not figure out how to fix that. I don't know what was happening. And it will not let me
Okay then.
tab over, delete.
So what you do is go to the paragraph above that where it says Mr. Weston. Right. No, put it at the beginning of it. Yeah, click in front of Mr. Weston. No, the paragraph above it, the previous page.
Yep.
And then use the format painter to right up at top left corner of the ribbon.
Oh,
So click, did you click, you need to click in there, yeah. And
Yep.
then
It says
drag
format.
it.
So click the format painter
Format.
there, and then click on the other paragraph that's not right.
Ah, look at that.
Well done.
Wow.
Oh,
Nifty
that may
trick.
be the best thing I learned today.
Same.
Here's all the
Otherwise,
tricks.
you can turn on the paragraph symbols and you'll see the extra
Mhm.
formatting spacing that's wrong. It's got a hanging indent.
Learn something new every day.
Wow,
I cannot live without that format painter.
I think that's gonna be life-changing.
Seriously.
That is like such a game changer.
Yeah.
You
Alright.
learn all this when you're trying to do specs in Word.
This really makes me feel old.
Yeah, me too. I've used the word a long time.
Yeah, you're using Word Perfect before that?
Yes, I was. I did really well
Thought I
with all those
was.
paragraph things.
Learning Microsoft tips from boomers. Just kidding. I'm a dinosaur. I'm the first one to admit it.
Something on page 8, top. Oh, yours is, well, I guess it's the second paragraph there where it says, it ends in insofar. Kind of, not that that sentence makes any sense. Maybe just lose that, yeah.
Yep, just needs to take insofar off that sentence.
I'm all set with no other changes.
There's another insofar that I'm not sure makes sense down under public meeting.
Oh, yeah.
I think that's just so far.
Strike that one from my.
Yep, those are my changes too. Done.
I have no additional changes.
Motion to approve the minutes for June 7th and June 14th as amended.
I'll second.
And can we get a roll call vote on that?
Sure, yes.
Yes, from Heather. Nick,
Yes,
Tony, sorry. Nick,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Pam, yes. We're all set
Thank
on
you
that.
guys.
Is that all the business that we
Doesn't
have?
June feel like many lifetimes ago?
Yeah.
It does.
Those were, yeah.
Now we're in another season of COVID almost.
I know, that's when
Must be
we were all so
depressing.
happy and we're gonna come back. Yeah. That's come up a lot in conversation lately. Remember back in June when we were all so happy?
I thought I was gonna go to Hawaii, but I didn't.
You didn't?
No,
You never did?
I pulled the plug on it like 3 days before we were supposed to leave.
Oh jeez.
Yeah.
Did you reschedule?
Can't get my hopes up anymore.
No, I'm just waiting for 22 and maybe I'll go to Ireland and Scotland.
That's
So
my
lovely.
Oy. Is there a motion on the floor to adjourn for the evening?
So moved.
I'm just waking up in the other room.
second,
We're good.
Alrighty,
Thank you all.
Yeah, nice to see everybody.
Thank you all.
all right.
nice to see you guys, nice to see this owl here. Although it does kind of like stare at you through the window.